Dan Hust, Sullivan County's Director of Communication, recently attended Google's public sector Generative AI live event in New York City. This forum, designed for the public sector leaders, focused on exploring the expansive potential of generative AI across organizational operations. Sullivan County is at the forefront of integrating AI through the form of a chatbot system. This innovative tool assists the county by answering questions traditionally directed to government offices. I had the opportunity to discuss with Dan his insights from the conference and the significance of AI for Sullivan County.
I still think about it and wonder, how did I end up there? But we were, if not the first, a very early adopter of Google's Vertex AI. It's a generative AI that it's called. And basically what it does is try to interact with people as humanly as possible. We had been working with a chatbot, just testing it out about the time that ChatGPT suddenly became the biggest thing everyone was talking about. And our test of it wasn't Vertex AI, it was a different part of Google AI. Our initial test had shown that in our county clerk's office alone, phone call volume dropped by 62% in just 3 to 4 months after debuting this technology. And we could trace it directly to the chatbot because it was answering things that people used to call us about. Where are you located? What are your hours? How do I file a deed? Instead, the chatbot was answering that, freeing up our staff to focus on the more complicated, complex questions that people ask and need help with. And the staff appreciated that because it can get very tedious and boring to constantly answer the same thing over and over again, even though complicated problems have their own challenges. But on top of that, it also showed them this technology is not here to replace you. It's here to complement and support you. And because we were able to implement this kind of cutting edge technology, basically with a two-man team, myself and our information technology director of applications and support, Andrew McCabe, Google wanted to show us off to other people in the public sector, schools, nonprofits, also private small businesses were at this event. And they invited us to come down on February 28th to their newest office, Pier 57 in New York City. I call it the Disneyland of Google because it really was a lot of fun, and speak to an audience of around 500 people about our experiences as part of a panel of other early adopters like ourselves. But we were by far the smallest, and that's what really intrigued Google. And lots of people who I talked with afterwards was, how can a lightly populated rural upstate county in New York have this ahead of lots of other bigger entities?
Absolutely. You talk about the government sort of embracing AI in some aspect, because there's a lot of talks about how the scariness of AI and what it can do, and especially having access to government, whatever. Was there any kind of pushback from Sullivan County in the beginning when AI was introduced, or who actually introduced AI to the county government?
Our county manager, Josh
Really?
Potosik,
Okay.
had heard about it at one of his conferences and had brought it up with me and our commissioner of our Information Technology Services Division, Lauren Green, and said, you guys, what do you think of this? And of course, we're tech-oriented anyway, but I've learned from experience and from places I've worked prior to this, being an early adopter, maybe not the very first one, we didn't anticipate we were going to be that, but being an early adopter gives you a strategic advantage. Not that we're competitive as a municipality, but that we better understand the technology than people who are coming in much later, and we have a better grasp of it, and we're farther ahead in implementing it for the public good, because that's what we wanted to do. And I've also learned personally, when something's scary, you dive into it. That's how I felt about going to this Google conference. I'm like, who am I? I come from a small upstate county. The biggest city I ever lived in was Virginia Beach. I've been to New York City many times, but that's a world-class city. It's Google, a world-class company. Why am I going to this thing to speak? But I jumped into it, and I have to say it's been one of the highlights of my career thus far. And it went very well. People responded extremely positively. They were impressed that a little county could do this. I call it like that children's book, The Little Engine That Could. We did.
Yeah. And it's amazing that now that Google has headquarters and offices here in New York City, because that was a California thing. You would have
Yep.
to go out west to experience Google. So how did you prepare for this talk?
They had a team that helped us understand what we were going to say. This was not a live Q&A. The audience did not ask questions. They had a moderator who asked questions. I found out afterwards, though, it was her first time doing this as well. She was great. Amina was her name. A single mom from Texas who is starting a new career with Google. She was inspiring. There were so many inspiring people to see with this. But she worked with us to have a few questions. There were four of us on the panel, so each of us needed to keep our answers relatively short so that we didn't hog up the time of everybody else. And so I knew that they were going to ask me specifically about things that the audience would be most interested in. How did a little organization, relatively speaking, like Sullivan County, pull this off? What has our experience been since then? And what are we looking to do with this technology in the future?
And exactly what was my next question. Where do you see this AI going in the county as far as with the county's use, and what are the sorts of significant impacts it could have?
There's several initial stages coming up that are already outside of the dreaming phase and more now, how do we make this reality? One is this artificial intelligence works like human intelligence. I said at the panel, I actually feel like I'm raising a child because her name is Saige. We named her Saige. S for Sullivan, AI for artificial intelligence. GE, I didn't know what, because I was like, GE, we bring good things to life, but that's General Electric's trademark phrase. And then somebody just told me the other day, government employee, because she's a government employee. So Saige is her name. And I feel very much sometimes like she is a child because she learns in many ways like a human being learns. If you just tell her, okay, this is what you need to know and this is what you need to regurgitate, you're not taking advantage of her full capabilities and letting her become what it is that we want her to become, which is a sage, an imparter of wisdom. So the first thing we're working on is increasing her accuracy and her abilities, because as she learns, sometimes she gets some things wrong. And this is where I'll say to anyone who is listening and wants to try her out, please, after every answer, when she asks if it was helpful or not helpful, tell her either way. In fact, if it's not helpful, it's even more important that you tell her that, because then she knows I didn't give the right answer or what they needed at that time. And that triggers her to go back and take a look automatically at how she answered and maybe how she could answer differently. We had just the other day her give an inaccurate answer and we clicked not helpful. And within 2 minutes, when we asked it again, she had the answer. So it's part of that training that the public can be a part of. They can help be a surrogate parent to Saige. Then after that, we are already talking about getting to a point, because there seems to be demand for this, of getting her to process payments, where she actually can take payments right through the chatbot setup. You want to pay your taxes, or you need to pay a fee to an office or settle a bill for some reason, that we want to make that happen. Also, when she is at a point where I really can't help you with that, where it's like a more complicated question or something that is just not in her database to answer, that we want to connect you directly with a live person. If it's during business hours, or if it's something like where somebody is, say, for example, feeling suicidal or something, and they actually say that to her, because they could, that we could automatically connect them rather than her response being, here's the number for you to call. Because that's right now, for example, if she can't give you the answer that you want and she knows that she can't, she just gives you our basic phone number, our 794-3000 number for the government center. And then you still have to figure out who you want to talk to. We want to make it as easy and effortless as possible for people to talk and interact with government.
I see the changes already in just searching the government website as far as like meetings, agendas. I think for me, my personal opinion is that the pandemic sort of pushed that along a lot faster than it would have gone. I look at Thompson is a good example, another one that they really updated their minutes and agendas, and you could go to a planning board meeting, hit one click, and you have all the papers for the projects and all the letters that were sent in for complaints about a project, just for an example. Do you see AIs catching on the rest of the county as these smaller towns, say Callicoon or North Branch or something like that, using AI for their government uses to help the public?
I do. I can't give you a timeline as to how quickly that'll happen. Again, we were an early adopter. We're still in the very early stages of this, but AI technology is rapidly evolving. There are more competitors out there than ever. That's why Google is having this conference. They want to put themselves out ahead of the pack, which I think they're doing a very good job with. But I said at the end of the panel, when they asked, what would you tell the folks here in a phrase about your experience and with AI? And I said, you can't afford to ignore it. You have to do it. And the crowd loved it too. I said, if Sullivan County could do it, anyone can, because we just had 2 people working on it. And it wasn't every day, all day long that we were working. Google helped provide us with a team. And there was definitely a cost involved, but I think those costs are going to decrease over time. What really attracted me to it was that I didn't have to sit down with every office in every department that is part of county government and figure out every single way somebody could ask a question and every single way we would need to answer it. I would have been spending every day, probably for a year, trying to put that together. I didn't have time for that. We didn't have time for that. So this new Vertex AI, or as we call her, Saige, she is able to dynamically, on the fly, see what new information we've added to the website, incorporate that into our database. And just from about 50 questions and answers that we provided to her, so she understood what it is we do and how we do it, is able to extrapolate from that all the different ways people could ask something and all the different ways she could answer it. She's still learning. Like I said, she's not 100% accurate. I'm told, too, there will never be a full 100% accuracy on it all. She'll always still sometimes say, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. You'll have to call here. But we want to get as close to that as possible so that people are getting useful, accurate, valuable answers for anything and everything that they're going to ask county government about. And maybe beyond, because we get people, too, asking, for example, about tourism offerings. And not that we're replacing, for example, the Visitors Association. Maybe we can bounce people over to the Visitors Association website through this. We also had the other day somebody ask where can they drop off clothes and shoes that they need no longer and they want to provide to others. We have those bins at our transfer stations. And I realized we don't really make any knowledge about that known on our website. So she's teaching me too, because I see the questions. I don't see identifying information. I see the questions, though, that people are asking and the answers that she's giving, and it helps me better understand what people are looking for and how to adjust what I'm doing as the communications director to meet that need.
And the county's preparing for the future. Because for us, this is all new stuff. But for the next generation, this is going to be secondhand.
Yes.
I can tell my daughter already every morning has a conversation with Alexa, asking the weather, or last night she asked for a bedtime story from Alexa, and she's getting used to that. So to her, when she grows up and she's our age, this is going to be, who knows where AI at this point is going to be. And just in the past 2 years, since I've heard of AI, the advances have been tremendous.
I was telling several people this week, think of it in terms of the microwave. We once did exist without the microwave, and we made it work. We now have the microwave. That doesn't mean that cooking disappeared, that people don't still like using a stove or going to the restaurant or something, but the microwave has made our lives so much incredibly easier. Can we really imagine life now without it? And I think that's AI's potential, is that one day we're going to be like, how did we deal without it? I know we did. But it's not going to supplant and replace everything about humanity and work and life. It's going to be a supplement and complement to it. And we want to demonstrate that right here and now on the county website.
I think you can see that sort of that happening in education, that education was really worried about what AI was doing to the students because of writing papers or that. But now that I see a lot of colleges and schools are embracing it and using it as, like I said, an assistant for the students and learning how to use it positively for research. Going back to the conference, what were some of the biggest concerns that folks brought up in the conference with AI, in regards to AI?
Of course, there's always cost. There's always the personnel, the manpower involved, the human power involved. I think, too, I am not yet ready to give a lot of concrete examples about how our chatbot has totally transformed everyone's lives. The closest I get to is that 62% drop in phone call volume, which certainly caught our attention and made us want to continue with the technology. But I have this sense about it, this excitement that there is some pretty awesome things coming that all of us are going to be able to do with AI. There's some awful things that we've got to be careful of. These upcoming presidential elections, I'm afraid AI is going to be used for bad purposes with that. But I want the county to be constantly and consistently demonstrating that AI can be put to very good use on behalf of the public, that it makes things easier and more helpful, and then it makes people want to interact more with us at county government. I don't want every interaction to be, oh,
Mhm.
I have to go to the DMV to do this. Oh, I have to call somebody in the office for the agent to get this done. I want it to be, oh, yeah, I need an answer to that. Let me just ask Saige real quick here. Oh, there's the answer. Okay, and move on with life. I want that to be, and I think later this year we will be able to be talking more and more about that. But right now we aren't quite there yet. So I could tell you how excited I am about the technology, but when people are really like, prove it to me, we're not quite fully there to convince all the true diehard cynics.
Mm.
Which, listen, I could be very cynical as well too, but we want to make sure, and we are focusing on making sure with this, that this investment it's of taxpayers' money, that they are getting a good return on that investment. So if in the future, for whatever reason, it turns out not to be cost effective, then we would go with some other alternative. But at this point, all things are pointing to it actually being exactly what people want and need. Just the adoption rate of people. We've had thousands already of people use this chatbot without me really doing any kind of promotion. This is one of the first times I'm really talking about it in public, because I wanted to see how, in just a sort of a natural, organic environment, it evolved. People are already using it because they're used to it elsewhere. They want this service from county government. So that's where I come back to saying, I don't think you can afford to ignore this technology.
Yeah, exactly. People are used to doing it. I interact, especially things I do for my father through, let's say, Amazon Pill. They have a chatbot. I usually talk to the chatbot and it helps say X, Y, and Z. You could do this, you could do that. I just want to go back a little bit on for if you can pull the curtain back a little bit as far as like how you inform Sage of the information. Like perfect example, if someone has a question about the budget, can you import the budget to Sage and Sage analyzes it and someone says, "Hey,
Mhm.
how much of my taxes going up this year?" and Sage will uh, output an answer. Is
Mhm.
that possible?
Maybe not to that level of detail yet, exactly with your tax, because county government only plays a partial role in what your property taxes are going to be.
Right.
She could probably tell you, for example, and I should test her out on this, what you can potentially expect for a tax increase based on the budget, because she reads our PDF documents that we have on there. She puts that into her database. But we have to help train her. As I said, I'm raising her. That's the stage we're in right now, is increasing her accuracy and her effectiveness. Part of it is making sure that she has access to the information that she needs to provide. Like that clothing bin thing, she didn't really have access to that. I was like, oh, we need to put that on the website. Sometimes, too, it's steering her attention away from things that are outdated. For example, you can go back several years and see our old press releases. For example, our warming center 2022, a press release would say our Monticello Warming Center was at the Strobel Center. 2024, the Warming Center is currently at the St. John's Episcopal Church on St. John Street in Monticello. She needs to be drawing the information from that current document rather than the one back there. And so how does she determine between that? So we've had to tweak her that way. There's also a way I'm just learning now, because our tech support team was the one that implemented this, but they're going to be training me on this in the next few weeks. Natural language inputs, where I actually can go in, basically open the hood and get in there and tinker with the wrenches. But basically, it's almost like I'd say, instead of a wrench, a magic wand, where I just say, Sage, this is what I need you to understand about this situation or this issue so that you can answer appropriately. Not, again, hard coding it in where she gives the same exact answer, because it may change down the road. And I want her to maintain that flexibility in being able to get to the latest information. But saying, well, you've been consistently maybe answering this not completely accurately, or something needs more to be done here. And that's the next stage that I'm working on with her.
Dan, Before we go, anything else you want to talk about as far as AI goes with the county, the future of AI in the county before we wrap up this little interview here?
I just want to encourage people to use the chatbot, to get comfortable with it, to let us know, or to let her know really when she has or hasn't been helpful on a situation. You can also email or call me. My information is available there. She should have it on file too if you ask her about me. And if she doesn't, I will fix that too. I'm thinking of all the things I haven't tested her on yet. But it's important not just for us at the local level, but I think for people to understand what AI can do so that it becomes less of a fear and more of, oh no, this is going to help me in my life because there's so many ways it can. And sometimes fear is just based on the unknown. Well, get to know Saige. I promise you, she's going to be friendly. She's not going to yell or shout at you or hang up on you. The worst she might do is say, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Does Saige have a birthday?
I would probably say it should be right around November 30th.
November 30th.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. We'll celebrate her birthday when we get there. But that was when she debuted. It was not when she was conceived, but when she took her bow in front of everybody in the public.
There you go. It became an official employee. Saige.
She did.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for talking to me about AI. Because it's very exciting. This whole new field I'm excited about AI and what could it do for the future and how it can help the public, like what's happening now with the county, with Saige helping the chatbot and the future could happen on towns and villages in the future. We're talking to Dan Hust, Communications Director for Sullivan County, letting us know about how AI is being implemented in the county. Thank you so much, Dan.
My pleasure.